Perhaps you imagine you understand loneliness, but the truth is, you haven't truly experienced it. Not the profound, insidious type Carl Jung illuminated. This isn't just about feeling isolated, it's the kind of loneliness that subtly warps children, turning them into observant X-ray machines who possess an uncanny ability to perceive others' true selves while perpetually feeling invisible themselves. If your childhood was marked by a pervasive sense of being a ghost within your own family, always present but never truly perceived by those around you, Jung uncovered a disquieting truth about the long-term impact on your developing mind. Today, I'm revealing how enduring emotional invisibility during childhood not only inflicts deep wounds, but paradoxically also sharpens you into a formidable, albeit isolated individual. That fierce hyper-independence you might consider a badge of honor, Jung termed it a powerful survival mechanism, one that over time subtly erodes your fundamental capacity for authentic human connection. Let me illustrate this dynamic for you. Consider a composite example drawn from patterns Jung observed across numerous cases. A child sits at the dinner table. Their parents are physically present, but their emotional engagement is conspicuously absent. The child quickly internalizes that crying elicits no comfort, and attempts to seek attention are met with irritation. Expressing any need at all seems to make everyone around them uncomfortable. So the child gradually ceases to need, stops asking, and instead begins to observe. This, Jung identified, is the formation of an emotional vacuum. It's not the overt abuse that leaves physical bruises, nor the abandonment that generates headlines. Rather, it's the quiet, persistent absence of genuine emotional presence. These are parents who feed you but never truly see you, siblings who share your space but never know your heart. It's a house full of people where you are compelled to raise yourself. The child evolves into what Jung meticulously documented in his clinical observations as the little adult. This is the kid who never throws tantrums because they instinctively understood tantrums were ineffective. This is the teenager who silently shoulders their own burdens because asking for help feels like attempting to speak a foreign language. This is the young adult who appears remarkably mature, impressively independent, and thoroughly composed. But here's the crucial detail no one tells you. That wasn't genuine maturity. That was a sophisticated adaptation to emotional starvation, and your brain, quite literally, rewired itself to survive it. Modern neuroscience has since validated what Jung initially observed in his practice. When children mature in emotionally absent environments, their neural pathways develop distinctively. The parts of the brain responsible for deciphering social cues become hyperactive, while the regions that process emotional data go into overdrive. This isn't merely psychological theory anymore, it represents measurable physiological brain development. Jung discovered that these children don't just endure their loneliness, they cultivate something he termed differentiated perception. While other children acquire social skills through conventional parent-child bonding, the invisible child learns something entirely different and far more acute. They learn to interpret the room as if it were a complex battlefield. When you cannot rely on people to convey the truth directly, you learn to unearth it yourself. When you cannot trust that someone will notice your struggles, you learn to notice when they are struggling instead. When emotional safety never emanates from others, you construct safety by meticulously knowing precisely what everyone around you is thinking and feeling. The invisible child matures into a scanner, an emotional surveillance system, a walking human lie detector. By the time they reach adulthood, they can enter almost any room and instantly discern who is feigning happiness, who is concealing anger, and who harbors secret desperation. They decipher micro-expressions with the same ease that others read traffic lights. They sense subtle emotional temperature shifts that most people completely overlook. This isn't a superpower they chose. It's a survival mechanism, meticulously built neuron by neuron, day after day, throughout a childhood spent in invisibility. Jung's clinical notes describe individuals who could map someone's entire psychological profile after just 5 minutes of conversation. They saw through social masks. They detected hidden agendas. They viscerally felt the tension in rooms that everyone else pretended wasn't there. And paradoxically, this made them incredibly lonely. Because here's the dark secret Jung uncovered. The more clearly you see people, the exponentially harder it becomes to trust them. When you can detect every minor fabrication, every performance, every social facade, the prospect of genuine connection begins to feel utterly impossible. You find yourself surrounded by people wearing masks, and you're the sole individual who can perceive that those masks are not their real faces. Ponder the cumulative effect of that over time. Every conversation transforms into an intricate analysis. Every interaction becomes a complex puzzle to solve. Every relationship morphs into a continuous psychological assessment. You cannot simply switch it off. The scanner is perpetually running, ceaselessly processing, always detecting the subtle chasm between what people articulate and what they genuinely feel. Someone assures you they're fine, but you observe the tension in their jaw. Someone claims to be happy for you, but you catch the fleeting flash of envy in their eyes. Someone asserts their support, but you sense the undertow of judgment beneath their words. And you cannot unsee it. You cannot unhear it. You cannot unknow what you know. This is the curse of differentiated perception. You perceive truths that others miss, but seeing that truth isolates you from the comfortable illusions that facilitate effortless connection for other people. Yet, the scanner ability isn't even the most perilous aspect. The true snare is what Jung called hyper-independence. And this is precisely where the invisible child's brilliant adaptation becomes their psychological prison. Reflect for a moment. When you grew up emotionally invisible, what fundamental lessons did you learn? You learned that needing people is inherently dangerous. You learned that relying on others inevitably leads to disappointment. You learned that the only person you can genuinely count on is yourself. Consequently, you constructed an impenetrable fortress of independence. You became the person who steadfastly refuses to ask for help, the friend everyone leans on, but who leans on no one, the partner who gives endlessly but struggles profoundly to receive, the professional who manages everything alone. You wear your independence like a suit of armor. I don't need anyone. I can handle it myself. I'm fine. On the surface, this appears to be immense strength. People admire your self-sufficiency. They commend your capability. They label you resilient. But Jung saw through this veneer. He recognized hyper-independence not as inherent strength, but as a deep-seated trauma response. Not as genuine confidence, but as an elaborate defense mechanism against the terror of being let down once again. Empaths aren't broken. They are alchemists in progress. The invisible child blossoms into an adult who unconsciously operates from one core, unshakable belief. If I need you, you will ultimately let me down. Therefore, I will simply choose not to need you. Let's examine a narrative illustration that vividly captures this dynamic. Picture an adult who grew up emotionally invisible. They are successful, highly competent, and everyone perceives them as having it all together. They are the friend people call in a crisis, the colleague who unfailingly delivers, the family member who solves everyone's problems. But internally, they are running on fumes. They are utterly exhausted from constant giving. They are depleted from incessant emotional labor. They are silently drowning in their own unmet needs, and they won't confide in anyone. They can't confide in anyone, because admitting need feels tantamount to admitting failure. This is where the dynamic becomes truly twisted. Because the hyper-independent adult empath exhibits another pervasive pattern, documented across multiple cases. They attract broken people like magnets. Why? Because broken people require fixing, and fixing people feels profoundly safe. When you are consumed with solving someone else's problems, you cleverly divert attention from acknowledging your own. When you are actively rescuing someone from their chaos, you get to experience the gratifying feeling of being needed without ever having to expose your own vulnerability. The hyper-independent empath constructs relationships where they are perpetually the strong one, the stable one, the unwavering helper. They date individuals who need saving. They befriend people who demand endless emotional labor. They work for bosses who require constant accommodation. And they accomplish all of this while meticulously maintaining their fortress. I'm helping you, but I don't need your help. I'm here for you, but please don't ask me to be vulnerable with you. It appears to be a flawless system. Except it isn't. Because underneath all that relentless giving, underneath all that tireless helping, underneath all that emotional labor, something deeply insidious is quietly accumulating. Jung called it the silent rage. Here's what unfolds. The adult empath gives and gives and gives. They read people perfectly. They anticipate needs with unerring accuracy. They provide steadfast emotional support. They willingly sacrifice their own desires to accommodate others. And deep down, they are constantly waiting. Waiting for someone to read them the way they effortlessly read everyone else. Waiting for someone to notice their struggles without them ever having to ask. Waiting for someone to see through their polished mask of competence and say, "You don't have to be strong right now." But it almost never happens. Because the hyper-independent empath has, through years of consistent behavior, implicitly trained everyone around them to believe they don't require anything. They've perfected the elaborate performance of being fine. They've communicated unambiguously that they are the helper, never the one to be helped. So, people take and take and take, not necessarily out of malice, but because the empath has made it seem as though giving is all they ever desire to do. And the rage builds, silent, deeply hidden, often denied even to themselves. Why doesn't anyone see I'm struggling? Why do I have to do everything alone? Why does no one ever think to ask if I'm okay? But here's the ultimate kicker. When someone does try to help, the hyper-independent empath reflexively pushes them away. When someone offers genuine support, they deflect. When someone attempts to reciprocate care, they minimize their own needs. "I'm fine. I've got it. Don't worry about me." The fortress is so complete, so impregnable, that they cannot permit anyone inside, even when they desperately yearn for connection. This rejection of help isn't conscious cruelty. It's a reflexive act of self-protection. Because somewhere, deep within their psychological wiring, accepting help equates to vulnerability. And vulnerability, in their deeply ingrained narrative, equals the terrifying risk of being let down. And being let down equals the agonizing confirmation of their deepest childhood fear, that they truly are alone. So, they remain alone, by a choice that paradoxically doesn't feel like a choice, in an isolation that skillfully masquerades as strength. Jung documented yet another exhausting pattern in his observations: the chameleon fatigue. This phenomenon occurs when the adult empath's hyper-attuned scanner converges with their profound need to keep everyone else comfortable. They step into a room and instantly, almost instinctively, sense its emotional temperature. The tension between co-workers, the unspoken conflict at a family dinner, the hidden resentment simmering in a relationship. And without even a conscious thought, they adjust. They become precisely what the room demands: cheerful to lighten heavy energy, quiet to avoid contributing to chaos, agreeable to prevent potential conflict, entertaining to distract from underlying pain. It happens so automatically that they often don't even realize they're doing it. But by the end of the day, they are utterly exhausted. By the end of the week, they can no longer recall what their own authentic emotions even feel like. This is what Jung famously called the persona problem. the public mask becoming so utterly dominant that the real self gradually vanishes beneath it. The invisible child learned early that their authentic self was unwelcome, so they diligently constructed a version of themselves that was palatable, the helpful one, the easygoing one, the one who never caused problems. And that performance proved so incredibly effective, garnered so much approval, and prevented so much conflict that they maintained it year after year, relationship after relationship, until the performance itself became their fundamental identity. But performances are inherently exhausting, and eventually, something inevitably breaks. We observe this pattern distinctly in the composite case profiles Jung developed. The highly functional adult who appears to have everything perfectly together. A thriving career, extensive social connections, impressive resilience. And then, suddenly, without warning, they collapse. This breakdown isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it manifests as a quiet, slow withdrawal, a gradual numbness, a creeping sense that nothing truly matters anymore. This is because they've spent such an extended period being precisely what everyone needed that they've forgotten how to simply be real. They've invested so much energy into their persona that their authentic self has atrophied from profound neglect. And one day, they awaken to the disorienting realization that they no longer know who they actually are. Jung documented the breaking point, the pivotal moment when the adult empath comprehends that their cherished independence is, in fact, insidious isolation. The moment they understand their perceived strength is actually an insurmountable wall. The moment they see that they are profoundly lonely in a crowded room because they meticulously built a fortress instead of nurturing bridges. This critical realization typically emerges through a crisis. A relationship ends because the empath couldn't allow their partner to truly see them. A friendship dissolves because the empath never shared their genuine struggles. A health crisis strikes because the empath ignored their own needs for too long. A burnout so complete that they can no longer sustain the performance. And suddenly, they see it, the pervasive pattern that has governed their entire life. The very walls they constructed to protect themselves from disappointment have, ironically, protected them straight into complete isolation. They realize they are surrounded by people who don't genuinely know them, precisely because they've never permitted anyone to know them. They've been so consumed with being what everyone needed that they forgot to be real. This is the moment Jung called the crisis of false independence, when the fortress reveals itself to be an unyielding prison. The adult empath looks around and perceives that all their relationships are essentially transactional, built on what they provide, not on who they intrinsically are. People admire the helper version, the strong version, the capable version. But would anyone truly love them if they ceased performing? Would anyone remain if they dared to admit need? Would anyone truly care if they weren't constantly useful? These questions are terrifying because often the visceral answer feels like no. But here's where Jung's work becomes profoundly transformative, because he didn't just identify the problem, he meticulously mapped out the solution. He called it shadow integration. The invisible child's shadow isn't their anger or their selfishness or their cruelty. Instead, it is their fundamental need, their vulnerability, their deep desire for authentic connection. Everything they were conditioned to believe was dangerous, everything they had to meticulously conceal to survive, ultimately became their shadow. And now, as an adult, those shadow aspects demand to be integrated, not eliminated. Integrated. This means internalizing that needing people is not a weakness. It means understanding that receiving is not synonymous with being needy. It means recognizing that vulnerability is, in fact, the indispensable foundation of all real connection. The invisible child became invisible because their needs were inconvenient, even burdensome. So they painstakingly learn to have no needs. But needs don't simply vanish when you ignore them, they retreat into the shadow. They become the disowned parts of yourself you cannot consciously acknowledge. Shadow integration means courageously bringing those needs back into the light. It means articulating, "I need help," and not immediately feeling an overwhelming sense of failure. It means accepting support without instantly feeling compelled to repay an insurmountable debt. It means being vulnerable and trusting, against all past evidence, that it will not utterly destroy you. This is terrifying work because it means risking the very thing the invisible child learned was most perilous. Risking that if you reveal your real self, people will inevitably disappoint you. Risking that if you express a need, no one will meet it. Risking that if you are vulnerable, you will ultimately end up hurt. But Jung discovered something crucial through his extensive therapeutic work. The invisible child turned adult empath already possesses incredible inherent strength. They survived profound emotional neglect. They developed an extraordinary capacity for perception. They built remarkable resilience. The core work isn't about becoming strong. They are already strong. The work is about learning that true strength profoundly encompasses the capacity to be vulnerable. Jung often spoke about transforming from a victim of loneliness to a master of solitude. There is a profound distinction. The victim of loneliness is alone because they are paralyzed by a fear of connection. The master of solitude chooses meaningful connection but no longer harbors a fear of being alone. The victim desperately needs independence because dependence utterly terrifies them. The master understands that interdependence is actually the ultimate goal. Not dependence, where you cannot function without others. Not independence, where you steadfastly refuse all connection. But interdependence, where you are whole and complete on your own, yet immensely enriched by the presence and connection of others. This means learning to voice needs clearly, not through vague hints, not through unspoken expectations that others should read your mind the way you read theirs. Instead, it requires clear, direct communication. I need support right now. I'm struggling and could genuinely use some help. I'd truly appreciate it if you could do this for me. It will feel incredibly awkward at first, even artificial, like you're admitting a fundamental weakness by acknowledging a need. But need isn't weakness. It is the very essence of humanity. And here's what Jung observed time and again, in case after case. When the adult empath finally learns to voice their needs authentically, two critical things invariably happen. First, some people will undoubtedly disappoint them. The takers, who were only present for what the empath consistently provided, will suddenly disappear when the dynamic shifts. And that hurts. It confirms every deeply ingrained fear the invisible child ever harbored. See, I was right not to need anyone. People simply cannot be trusted. But then the second, profoundly hopeful thing happens. The people who genuinely matter, the people who are truly capable of authentic, reciprocal relationship, they step up. They meet the voiced need. They honor the vulnerability. They prove through their actions that genuine connection is in fact possible. And slowly, gradually, the adult empath internalizes a revolutionary truth. That being seen is undeniably worth the inherent risk of being disappointed. Jung firmly believed the invisible child carried something immensely precious. They are what he called cycle breakers. They perceive the pervasive dysfunction others have normalized. They recognize the ingrained patterns others unconsciously repeat. They possess the unique awareness to consciously choose a different path. The invisible child who successfully integrates their shadow doesn't just heal themselves, they initiate a profound healing for future generations. They raise children who are truly emotionally seen. They build relationships founded on authenticity instead of elaborate performance. They create workplaces where vulnerability is respected instead of callously exploited. They break the insidious cycle of emotional invisibility. But breaking these deeply entrenched cycles necessitates doing the very thing that terrifies you most. It requires letting people truly see you, not the helpful version, not the competent version, not the perfectly composed version, but the real, messy, needing, vulnerable, imperfect version of yourself. And yes, some people will inevitably disappoint you. Some people will unfortunately confirm that your childhood fears were, in certain instances, justified. Some people simply aren't safe. But Jung's enduring promise is this: when you cease performing and begin genuinely being real, you will finally discover who truly deserves to be in your life. You will stop attracting people who perpetually need fixing and start attracting people who are already whole. You will stop constructing relationships based solely on what you can do for others and begin building relationships founded on genuine, mutual connection. You will transform from the person everyone relies on but no one truly knows into the person who is profoundly known and genuinely loved. This is the profound resolution Jung offered throughout his therapeutic work. Not that the invisible child's journey through loneliness was for naught, but that it precisely equipped them with the exact tools needed to construct something extraordinary. Your innate ability to see people clearly becomes the foundational bedrock for choosing people wisely. Your arduous experience with emotional absence transforms into the powerful motivation to consciously create emotional presence. Your painful history of being unseen becomes the unwavering commitment to truly seeing others. You don't have to remain invisible. You don't have to stay confined within the fortress. You don't have to keep performing independence while secretly dying for connection. You can integrate your shadow. You can voice your needs. You can receive without debilitating guilt. You can be vulnerable without catastrophic consequence. You can be the cycle breaker Jung believed was absolutely essential for human psychological evolution. The invisible child syndrome doesn't define you. It prepared you for the profound work of becoming whole, for the immense courage of being real, for the enduring strength of being simultaneously independent and deeply connected. Jung's integration process is not a quick fix. It's not a weekend workshop or a single miraculous breakthrough moment. It is the patient, persistent work of rewiring neural pathways that have been set for decades. It is the courageous act of consciously choosing vulnerability, even when every primal instinct screams at you to retreat. But it is profoundly possible, and it is immeasurably worth it. Because on the other side of this integration lies something the invisible child never experienced: true connection, real intimacy, the transformative experience of being fully known and still fully loved. If this deeply resonated with you, if you recognize yourself in the invisible child who matured into the hyper-independent adult, please drop a comment below saying, "I am breaking the cycle." Let that declaration be the powerful first step toward integration. Subscribe for more profound insights into Jungian psychology and the journey from entrenched survival patterns to authentic, thriving living. You are not broken. You are not too damaged. You are exactly strong enough to undertake this vital work. And the world desperately needs more people who have done this work, who have transformed their wounds into profound wisdom, who have learned that real strength unequivocally includes vulnerability. You are the cycle breaker, and your integration doesn't merely change your life, it changes every life you touch from this moment forward.